What they would actually do was take a knife and put a hash mark on the mother's arm, take the pus off of the cow, slather it on the mother's arm, and when it got all big and infested, scraped it off and stuck it into the baby. There was no science about any of it when it started. And then in 1853, when they started the first mandatory vaccination laws, at the same time started what's called Our Baby's Battle, which was the anti-vaccine movement that was started by all the parents whose children died and their kids got gangrene, and they had all these horrible side effects. So what we're seeing now, because we didn't learn the lessons of history, is just a repeat of history repeating itself over again with the anti-vaccine movement, the vaccine education movement, the vaccine revolution is what I'd like to call it, because all of those things started with what were called filth diseases, F-I-L-T-H, filth diseases. Smallpox, typhoid, cholera, all of those things were filth diseases when we didn't have sanitation.
Right.
Even tetanus, even those things were all about sanitation. We don't have filth diseases anymore. I found this report that was from the New York City Health Department. It was like their annual report, and they were talking about how many tons of horses and pigs and cows and manure and all the stuff that they scraped off the streets and deposited it somewhere, I'm assuming into the bay. And so all of these filth, at the turn of the century, before we had chlorinated water, before we had sanitation, before we had refrigeration and electricity everywhere,
Right.
so the food didn't rot and end up with maggots in it, we had a deep need for public health and public health safety. But the way that it's rolled forward 100 years later, we don't need their nonsense. We don't need it. Injecting all of this junk, I call it foreign matter, into our children and adolescents and adults, because we always talk about the kids. We forget about all the carnage where it's happening in adults. We don't need it anymore.